Hello, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us for one of our Fortune 500 webinars. My name is Sam, and I will be your moderator today. And in just a second, we are going to be joined by Michael Corgett, one of our financial advisors. Michael will dive into how Medigap is essential for securing comprehensive retiree health care, as well as teaching you how it complements Medicare to cover critical gaps, ensuring your financial and health security in your retirement. Before Michael comes on, I'd like to just very quickly remind you that we are not affiliated nor endorsed whatsoever by any Fortune 500 company. We are a completely separate entity here, so please keep that in mind as you're listening along with Michael today. After his presentation, I will rejoin him quickly to ask him some of the more popular questions we receive. So please keep an eye on that chat box and listen for those if you're interested. And after this presentation, you will be redirected to our homepage where you can make an appointment with Michael to speak to him directly about your specific concerns or situation if you wish. You can also take advantage of the complimentary cash flow analysis that Michael will go into detail about. And with all of that out of the way, let's get started with Michael Corgett.
Thanks, Sam, and thank everyone for joining me today. We really appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your busy day. Today, we're going to talk about basically the health care for all of us over the age of 65, and that's Medicare, and then the coverages that you're going to want to consider when you do turn 65 and do sign up for Medicare's Part A, B, and Part D prescription drug coverage. It is very unique. It can be very complex. I've been talking about this to my retired clients for I couldn't tell you how many years, and it's changing and evolving all the time. But we're going to try and break it down a little bit today, in simplistic terms. We'll talk about coverages and the gaps that Medicare has and where Medigap coverages can fill those gaps, the importance of choosing Medigap or Medicare supplemental or Medicare Advantage insurance programs and understanding the differences between Medigap, and Medicare Advantage plans. And then just finally making sure that you have a plan, especially if you're not 65 yet and you're not retired yet. Let's help you get to that point to where you are comfortably retired. And then when you do turn 65, we can talk intelligently about your next steps as far as your healthcare coverages in the future. As of today, this slide's a little outdated, but there's a little more than 15 million current Medicare beneficiaries who are currently enrolled in Medigap insurance plans. Again, that's the Medicare supplemental insurance plans. That has changed significantly over the last several years, and that is primarily because of us baby boomers. We're all getting older. More than 10,000 of us each and every day are turning 65. Hard to believe, but as baby boomers, we're a big group of people, over 75 million. And I am one of those baby boomers. So again, each and every day, 10,000 or more of us is turning 65, has to consider Medicare, but then also has to consider how do they want to supplement their Medicare coverage, which is your government insurance plan. And that supplemental insurance is how much of the gaps is it going to fill? So let's go ahead and dive into our presentation. What does Medigap not cover? Okay, it does not cover a lot of things. There are gaps, there are deductibles, there are co-insurance levels. In fact, for hospitalization, there could be multiple deductibles if you are hospitalized for more than one condition in any given year. Okay, but Medigap or Medicare supplemental insurance plans will help to fill the void. In other words, it will fill the gaps, those deductibles and those co-insurance levels that Medicare does not cover. But obviously, this comes at a cost. Medicare supplemental insurance plans are like any other insurance plans. They have a premium, a monthly premium, along with the premium that you have to pay for Medicare. And I'll talk about both of those here in a few minutes. But what does Medicare or Medigap not cover? Doesn't cover long-term care, vision or dental, hearing aids and eyeglasses. Some of the things that you think that your current insurance might cover, it does not cover typically, okay? So the gaps in the original Medicare Part A, as I mentioned, Part A is the hospitalization coverage. There is a deductible. Each and every hospital say right now, this year, that deductible is over $1,600. And then there are co-insurance payments for the various days that you have in the hospital. The first few days don't cost you anything, but after a few days in the hospital, it could be there's a per day deductible of over $200. And then after another 30 days, it's a deductible that goes up to, or a per day cost that goes up to over $400 a day. And once you get over 150 days, potentially, which is a long hospital stay, you're going to have to pay for each and every day in the hospital out of your own pocket. Medigap coverage can fill in the void on all of that. It can cover the deductibles and all the hospital co-payments, as well as skilled nursing facility coverage. If you wind up in the hospital for something and then need some sort of rehabilitation, for example, they will put you in a skilled nursing facility. There is a cost of that too. Medicare covers the first 20 days, but then there is a co-payment on the 21st day. Your Medigap coverage can cover that as well. The skilled nursing facility coverage is only if you were hospitalized. You can't just go into a skilled nursing facility without having been in the hospital for some sort of illness or surgery and expect Medicare to cover the Medigap or the skilled nursing facility. So you got to keep that in mind as well. And there are holes as far as home health care. Home health care is a big deal in the world that we live in today. There are a lot of home health care services that can be provided outside of a skilled nursing facility where people come to your home, do physical therapy, wound care, provide your prescriptions, these sorts of things. So again, Medigap can fill all of the voids or most of the voids that Medicare does not cover. But then there's also gaps in Part B. Okay, Part B is essentially surgical and doctor's visits. There is also a deductible here as well. That deductible is smaller. It's $240 a year. It is a one-time deductible. And then your co-insurance is essentially 80-20. Medicare will pay 80% and you will pay 20% of what they call reasonable and customarily billed charges. Again, your Medigap coverage can cover the deductible and the co-payments depending on which plan you choose to get. The better coverage you choose, the more it will cost you. You got to keep that in mind. I've been through this again with many of my clients over the years, and I've typically pointed them towards a specific Medigap plan, which I'll talk about here momentarily. But you can get lesser expensive Medigap policies that cover some of the things that Medicare doesn't pay for, but maybe not all of the things that Medicare does not pay for. And here is an example. There are several different alphabetical plans available. And as you can see here in my chart, which I'll just make a little bit bigger real quick, plans A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, just kidding. But the most comprehensive Medigap plans are letters F and G, where essentially they will pick up almost all of the expenses that Medicare does not pay for. As you can see here, some of the others do pick up most of those costs, but not all of those costs. The check marks are good. The X's mean they're not covered. By the way, you can go to medicare.gov and definitely get a lot more information on what Medicare does cover, but you can also get a better idea of what these Medicare supplemental insurance plans cover specifically, as well as by going to some of the specific insurance carriers like United Healthcare or Alliance Blue Cross and Blue Shield, just to name a couple, for more information on how each one of their Medigap policies cover the various Medicare Part A and Part B expenses. It can be very, it can be very confusing. Again, I mean, sometimes I don't even, sometimes I miss or don't pick up on some certain things, but I've been doing it quite some time. I know I could do a good job in helping to explain this to an individual like yourself, and make sure you get the right plan. Moving into a discussion on the long-term benefits, it does protect you against high out-of-pocket expenses. We talk a lot about in our retirement seminars, the out-of-pocket costs for an individual from age 65 through normal life expectancy. This includes insurance premiums, Medicare premiums, prescription drug costs, and all of the out-of-pocket expenses. For a married couple, those expenses add up to about $350,000 over the lifetime of a married couple, $350,000. If you could get coverage that helps you to offset a lot of those potential expenses, you're definitely going to want to do that. Having Medigap coverage provides stability as far as year after year after year, because you get consistent coverage with your Medigap. It will continue to fill the void, and Medigap coverages are also guaranteed renewable. So regardless of your health changes, you're able to keep your coverage and or move to other Medicare supplemental insurance plans with other carriers without having to provide any sort of health insurability. That's guaranteed if you sign up for Medigap coverage when you start. Now, I'm going to talk about Medicare Advantage here in a little bit, but again, the plans that offer the most comprehensive coverages are really plans F and G, but C definitely offers a lot of coverage too. Lesser expensive programs with good coverages would be plans N and plan D. And then the more basic plans, would be like plan A or plan H. Just so, keep that in mind. Again, I typically will point most of my clients towards plan F or plan G, primarily plan G, but keep all those things in mind, again, because these policies have a monthly cost along with Medicare. Some of the other plan for saving a buck, but reading the fine print, make sure that if you could buy a plan that might have a high deductible. So don't be surprised. Watch the fine print in your policy. They do have to follow the plan outlines that I showed you a little bit earlier. So again, keep all that in mind. And then I talked a little bit about Medicare Advantage, but let's dive into it right now, okay? Medigap or Medicare supplemental policies are essentially going to supplement what Medicare is providing you. And essentially, so whatever Medicare does not cover, I mentioned deductibles and copayments, your supplemental insurance plan will cover or can cover it, all right? A Medicare Advantage policy is essentially going to replace original Medicare. So an Advantage plan becomes your Medicare. You still pay your Medicare Part B premium, which I failed to mention, but this year is $174.50 a month. That is the lowest monthly premium based on your current adjusted gross income, which for a single person is a little more than $100,000 a year, and for a married couple, adjusted gross income of a little more than $200,000 a year. But if you have income that is higher, various levels, your Medicare Part B premium can be higher, and at significant income levels, it can reach over $500 a month. So there is a Medicare Part B insurance premium. There is no premium for Part A, and we'll talk about prescription drug coverage here in a minute. But Medicare Advantage plans are, again, they're replacements to Medicare. There are carriers that really focus on Medicare Advantage, and you see a lot of advertisements for them on TV, where they'll may cover hearing aids. They maybe cover prescription glasses, all these sorts of things, gym memberships, okay? A lot of the things that Medicare doesn't cover and Medicare supplemental plans don't cover, your premiums for an Advantage plan are going to be smaller, and in many cases won't cost you anything. The key difference is that whatever carrier that you choose with an Advantage plan is going to put you into their network of doctors and hospitals. So for you to have coverage at all in an Advantage plan, you have to be seeing or have to see one of their plan's doctors and or go to one of their plan's hospitals or surgical facilities to get coverage at all. Now, most of these networks are very comprehensive, but they are not complete. With Medicare supplemental insurance plans, all you have to find is a doctor in a hospital that accepts Medicare. And almost every doctor in every hospital accepts Medicare. And if they accept Medicare, then your Medigap plans will cover many of the out-of-pocket expenses that you don't currently get covered with your Medicare insurance. Okay. So again, the Advantage plans offer a lot, but you do have some limitations. You also don't have coverage if you travel overseas on an Advantage plan, because all the networks are typically based here in the States. You do have coverages up to 80% of the payments for travel overseas with Medicare. Hard to believe, but you do. And one of the things I really want to make sure I point out, all right? I mentioned if you sign up for Medigap and want to switch carriers, you are guaranteed the ability to move around once you're in the Medigap, I'll call it the Medigap system, okay? You could go from carrier A to carrier B to carrier C by shopping the premiums around, but you will never have to worry about your insurability. You will always be guaranteed the ability to get another Medicare supplemental insurance plan. If you choose a Medicare Advantage plan at any point in time, whether it's from the beginning or after having Medigap for a few years, okay, again, less premium out of pocket, potentially a lot more coverage with the network that's available to you. But if you get disenchanted with Medicare Advantage plans and want to go back to Medigap plans, you will be medically underwritten and you may have limitations put upon you by trying to go back to Medigap insurance plans. Okay. I really can't stress that point enough. Advantage plans have their advantages, but they could have their disadvantages. I like to say simply, if you have health issues, health concerns now, or believe you're going to develop them in the future, i.e. you've got a family history of cancer or some sort of illness, you may want to stay in the Medigap system, the Medigap programs versus going to Medicare Advantage plans. If you're healthy, and you feel like it's going to stay that way for you, consider Medicare Advantage plans, okay? Medicare supplemental plans can be $50, $75, $100 a month. Most of the best ones are $150 to $200 a month per insured, so it'd be twice that for a married couple if you're both on Medicare. Each of you also pays your Medicare Part B premium. It's typically deducted from your Social Security check. So again, you could be looking at premiums of anywhere from, let's say, $200 to $400 a month for Part B coverage, as well as your supplemental insurance. If money is a concern for you, you may want to consider the Advantage plan rather than a supplemental plan. So keep all of this in mind. Medicare, obviously, none of these are available unless you are actually on Medicare. So you got to keep that in place. You can't have a Medicare supplemental insurance plan and a Medicare Advantage plan. You got to choose one or the other. And I talked about the enrollment flexibility with Medigap coverage or Medicare supplemental coverage versus the Advantage plans. So a lot said as far as the differences and some of the similarities between the two. I talked about the foreign travel, and you do have a lot more predictable spending with stable costs and coverages when you have some kind of supplemental insurance plan or Medicare Advantage plan. Again, it's much like the insurance that you had when you were working with, again, maybe Blue Cross and Blue Shield or United Healthcare, okay? But now you've got two health plans. One is the government, and that's Medicare, And the supplemental plan is designed to fill the gaps that Medicare does not cover. So again, I hope a lot of this was helpful. I could talk a lot more about both types of coverages, and I would look forward to the opportunity to talking with you one-on-one. But we talked earlier, have a plan. If you're already retired, well, then obviously we'd be happy to talk to you about making the most of your retirement assets. If you're 5, 10, 15, or 20 years away, give us a chance. We'd be happy to put together a comprehensive retirement cash flow analysis. We like to call that our Retire Kit. It's a complimentary service. So please keep that in mind. A lot of Americans don't have a plan. So take advantage of that opportunity with us here at the Retirement Group. We're a group of people with a lot of years of experience that have been working with corporate employees for a long time. I've been an advisor for more than 30 years. I've got a great deal of knowledge on a lot of the employer plans of the people that I work with around the country. And then again, a complimentary financial analysis is something we would be happy to put together for you. You could scan this QR code here on the left to schedule a meeting with myself or one of my colleagues, or scan the code on the right to follow our LinkedIn page. We provide a lot of information on the Retirement Group's LinkedIn page. If you want more information, you can give us a call at 1-800-900-5867, or you could schedule, you can send us an email at info@theretirementgroup.com. So with all of that said, I do appreciate everyone's time. I'd look forward to talking to you more about this again in the future. And then let's hand it back over to Sam and see if we've got any questions.
Thank you, Michael, for such an insightful presentation. We appreciate all of your knowledge. Alrighty, we're going to ask just a couple questions. We'll try to keep it short. As a reminder, after this presentation is ended, you will be redirected to the homepage where you can book that appointment with Michael, or you can take advantage of that complimentary cash flow analysis and get started on your retirement planning. Hopefully, not started on it, but you can start that cash flow analysis.
Sooner.
Alrighty.
Doing it sooner rather than later.
I know. Are you ready for that first question, Michael?
Yes, I am.
What are the implications of switching from Medigap to another supplement plan or vice versa?
I talked a little bit about that. From one Medigap plan to another Medigap plan, there really are no implications. You're obviously changing carriers. Some carriers have better coverage per se. I mentioned usual and customary type of expenses, but your insurability is guaranteed. So you can go from carrier A to carrier B to carrier C to save a few bucks in premium, but you don't have to worry about not having coverage. It is different. If you go from Medigap to Advantage plans, okay, you're going to be fine. You're going to have coverage under the Advantage plan, and typically pretty darn good coverage as long as your doctors and hospitals and prescriptions are covered by that plan. Where the problem lies is that if you get disenchanted with your Advantage plan, let's just say your carrier, you can move around from one Advantage plan to another Advantage plan, but if their network starts to shrink or their coverages, start to go away, and I've read a lot about companies like Humana beginning to limit what they're covering, like gym memberships and hearing aids, both specifically mentioned in an article that I recently read. They're losing a lot of money, and reimbursements from Medicare are shrinking. So they're spending more money, their reimbursements are shrinking, and they're starting to take benefits away. If you want to go back from an Advantage plan to a Medigap plan, you're going to have to provide insurability. You'll have to answer health questions, and your coverage can be limited. So you got to keep that in mind. Medicare Advantage plans are not everything they're all cracked up to be.
All righty, thank you. Next one. Can Medigap premiums increase over time, and what factors contribute to such changes?
That's another great question. Yes, they can go up like everything else. Premiums for our auto insurance, our homeowners insurance, our traditional healthcare insurance. with our former employers, they do go up. Yes, Medigap premiums do go up. I've seen it over the years. It depends. You can obviously, if your plan premium goes up, you could shop it around. There's a number of carriers in that marketplace. A lot of the factors that affect that are obviously healthcare inflation, healthcare costs overall, whether it's doctor's visits, hospitalizations, and especially prescription drug costs, which I didn't even touch on, Part D coverage. Prescription drug costs are skyrocketing. And, Medicare has to limit those. In turn, Medigap plans also have to limit those as well.
All righty, thank you. And then speaking of Part D, this last question, how do Medigap plans affect the coverage of prescription drugs, especially with Medicare Part D?
That's a great question. So
Perfect.
now I get to talk about it.
Yeah.
Medicare used to cover prescriptions as well, but back in 2006, they broke off prescription drug coverages, I believe when President George W. Bush was in office. And now there's Part D insurance plans, which specifically cover all of your prescription drugs. There's actually, I believe, 6 or 7 tiers of various drugs versus, generics, specific types of generics, and then brand names, high cost brand names, so on and so forth. And then you get into like injectables, the very expensive prescriptions. What I always say, if you see a prescription advertised on television, that prescription, it costs a fortune. So that's why they're advertising it on TV.
Yeah.
They're trying to cover their costs. So you will have a Medicare Part D. You will have your own Part D insurance plan as well as a Medigap plan. So you'll have 2 different policies. Your Medigap, which let's just say your premium is $150 a month, and then your Part D coverage, which could be with, let's say, CVS Caremark or Optum, just to name a couple. You'll pay a monthly premium for that as well, $30, $40, $50 a month for your prescription drug coverages. I won't get into the deductibles and co-payments because it is a little convoluted, but I'd be happy to talk to you more about it. You have Medigap's one policy, Part D is another. You can obviously switch them both around all the time. And Part D coverage is also, again, you don't have to worry about insurability with Part D. Part D is built into most Medicare Advantage plans. So I hope that helped answer that in less than a 15-minute answer to the question.
Thank you. Yeah, this is such a dense topic. It's definitely worth
goodness, yes.
giving you a call and speaking to you directly about it. All righty, Michael, anything else you wanted to add before we go?
Sam, I appreciate you and I appreciate everyone for joining us today. We'd look forward to talking to you if any of you have any questions about anything that has to do with retirement planning and or Medicare insurance. Have a great day and watch our next video. Talk to you soon.
We hope to see you all on our next webinar. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Michael. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.